Well, and that brings up a good point too. So, Jan and I typically skip breakfast. We haven't eaten breakfast routinely for many years. Um, Here's where we do make exceptions. So, we're going to be flying, and it is just so difficult to get good food at the airport. And I get it. You can pack it sometimes, which we do, but coming back, you don't always have good food to pack. Either way, so what we'll do is, we'll eat, before our flight, we'll eat a good breakfast, high protein, and then that can take us through. So we're not eating junk all day long in the airport because we're so hungry. So then that can take us through to dinner when we're at a place that we can eat some decent food. So it's kind of like the athlete. You're still eating around, your activities. You're eating around, your travels. If you prepare for those things, then you don't get stuck and start eating more junk.
That is absolutely. You actually struck another light bulb in my mind when you were.
I know I've got so many questions going on, so keep going.
You notice when you're in a really good conversation and you're like, okay, I need to pin that thought to come back to you. Right now, if you saw like thought bubbles amongst my head, I have about 30 thought bubbles. Every time you and Janet speak, I'm like, ooh, thought bubble, thought bubble, thought bubble. But going back to what you were talking about with the travel side of things, this is something I do with all the athletes I work with. A lot of them are flying different time zones on a halfway frequent basis. Or even to think about going back to say that high school athlete or whatever it is, I always tell people within reason, pack food that that you're comfortable with and that you're going to like. I mean, I realize you can't always have a whole suitcase realistically of food, but anything that you're able to take with you, I always find it to be really beneficial. One is it can kind of avoid eating more of those junk food snacks along the way that just because you're hungry, you're, there. But the other thing where it ties into is often I'll work with athletes and maybe they are at an all-day swim meet. And they're like, okay, well, usually at these meets, they have, A, B, C, X, apples, whatever it is, where they like eating. Well, then they go to that swim meet. They're there all day and they don't have any of that food. So now they're taking Twizzlers and, Starburst or, whatever it is. And similarly, I've had athletes they've flown across the country for a marathon or whatever it is. And they're checking out the hotel in front and they're like, oh, they have, they're supposed to have a good breakfast and that type of stuff. Then they get there and they realize the breakfast is not anything close to what they wanted and eat. So, and all of a sudden like, oh man, I wish I had whatever from back home. So within reason, I always encourage athletes to take food with them. Yeah. That's easy to travel with.
Yeah, I agree. Jen and I, most of the time when we fly, it's difficult to pack for your whole 3-day vacation or whatever. But, if we're driving somewhere for 3 or 4 days, we just pack our own food, cooking, we get a kitchenette. We even bring our grill. We'll cook steaks. It's just so much better. And not only is it cheaper, but it's better for you. And it just makes it so you don't overeat. Because let's face it. I mean, how many times do you go out to a restaurant and you tell yourself, well, you know what, today I'm going to order the 8-ounce filet and I'm going to, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you see a double bacon cheeseburger on the menu. You're like, well, I'm going to have that with, okay, but I'm feeling guilty about the bacon double cheeseburger. So I'm going to have salad with it instead of fries. But then you're like, last minute, no, give me the fries, right? I mean, it happens to me regularly.
Yeah.
But if you pack your food and you eat the food that you pack, then you don't do those kind of things. So